Welcome to What's Up in Jeju, where I visit places around the island and talk about what's happening with hashtag Daily K's host, Peter Bint.
Today, we are not going to a certain place in Jeju. We're focusing on a certain figure.
Yes, we are focusing on a historic figure, a very important and famous historic figure in Jeju, but we will also be visiting a place that is dedicated to this person. Yes.
Oh, okie dokie. So who are we talking about?
Okay, so before we get into the who, let me just say, last week we covered one of the most, if not the most painful periods of Jeju's history, the April 3rd incident, if everybody recalls. So when I was interviewing the 해설사, or the commentator at the World Peace Museum for that show, she told me that there were times while she was researching the incident where she spent whole nights weeping and unable to sleep because just of the horror, right? If you missed the show last week, I really encourage you to go back and check it out because it really is an important part of Jeju's history. But anyway, the 해설사, she looked really sad when she was telling me all of this, right? It's just very, very sad and just terrible, terrible part of Jeju's history. And she says all of Jeju's history is really dark and really painful, except one. And then this was when her face lit up and she told me that there was one very bright spot in Jeju's history that is well recorded and we have access to. And that part of Jeju's history is about this lady whose name is Kim Man-Deok.
Kim Man-Deok. I'm not familiar with that name. I hope I'm not too ashamed to say that. Maybe some of the listeners will be the same as me and maybe even some people in Korea. So that's the person at the center of today's What's Up in Jeju.
Yes, and I did not know of her until I moved here. But after learning, I feel like all of Korea, all of the world needs to hear this story. But to find out more about her, I visited the Kim Man-Deok Memorial Hall. It's located in the heart of Jeju City, not too far from the airport, and I interviewed curator Kim Se-young. Before we get into the details, I'll let her tell you guys a little bit about who Kim Man-Deok is and what the museum is all about.
All right, here's our first clip.
김만덕 기념관은 도전과 나눔을 실천한 김만덕을 기리고 그 정신을 널리 알리기 위해서 만들어진 대한민국 최초의 나눔 문화 전시관입니다. 남에게 도움을 주는 것도 포함이 되겠고 아니면 뭐 나의 행복을 남과 나누는 것도 나눔이 되겠고 다양하게 말을 할 수 있겠죠. 그냥 풍월한 전통적인 그런 박물관 개념보다는 뭐 그런 박물관 같이 김만덕이라는 인물에 대해서 알리는 역할도 하고요. 김만덕이 나눔을 실천한 사람이기 때문에 이 나눔에 대해서 알려주는 교육적인 공간이기도 해요.
Okay, so let our listeners know what Kim Se-young was saying there.
Right, so Kim Man-Deok was a Jeju woman from the Joseon dynasty who was a merchant and a philanthropist. The memorial hall that's dedicated to her is Korea's first ever philanthropy-themed museum. And it's to honor her, but also the spirit of philanthropy and giving. There's a Jeju saying that actually goes, work like a dog, spend like Man-Deok.
Referring to her.
Yeah, referring to her. So she was known to be really frugal, but it wasn't for the sake of just saving up for her own fortune. It was for the benefit of the less privileged, the poor. And today we'll be getting into her story and why and how she actually became a celebrity in Jeju and in all of Korea in her day.
Really? So what time period are we talking about? Because the Joseon dynasty spans like hundreds of years.
Right. So she was born in 1739. That's, I believe, like the tail end of the Joseon dynasty towards the end. Her father was actually a 양반. So he was a higher, like an upper class. But he was in political exile on Jeju when he met her mom. And her mom was a Jeju native who was a commoner from the lower class. And they were really, really poor. According to the law of the time, when children were born to parents of different classes, the children were placed in the lower class. You didn't have a choice. You were just automatically placed there. The story gets even sadder. So when she was 11, her father died in a shipwreck. Then a year later, her mom also passed away, it said, due to grief. And then, so she became an orphan at 12 years of age. So she ended up being taken in by a 기녀 or giseng, which is a female entertainer. and adopted as a foster daughter. And the way it went back in the day is you just kind of, children took on the vocation of the parents. So she ended up being educated and to be a kinya or a kiseng. And they were in another class altogether. So her social status was completely changed. However, with becoming a kiseng, she was educated on all the arts. So she learned to sing, dance, she learned how to ride horses, and then she was also educated in medicine. I don't know how that fit in there, but she was.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was said she was really smart and really successful. So she became head kiseng by the age of 20. And then the whole time she wanted to break free from this lifestyle and return to like normal living, I guess. And by the time she was 24, she had saved up enough money to buy back her freedom. Back then, kisengs were considered state property. And so there was a huge fee that they had to pay to change their social status.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she was able to do it. She reclaimed her commoner status, and with her newfound freedom, she opened an inn where she also engaged in port trade. And then this was the beginning of her incredible entrepreneur journey. She had immense success as a businesswoman. I mean, she made loads and loads of money, became very wealthy.
Wow.
It's said that she was probably the richest woman or richest person in Jeju and one of the richest people in all of Korea. Yeah, at the peak of her wealth. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, crazy, right? In 1792, Jeju is unfortunately hit by a famine. Bad things get worse. And then in 1794, strong winds and bad weather, just everything. It was just years and years and years nonstop famine from really, really bad weather. Yeah, it lasted for a long time. It's said that up to 170,000 people died due to starvation during this time in Jeju, which was a third of the island's population at the time. Yeah, so that's a lot of people.
That's insane.
Yeah, and then so the governor made a plea to the king to send 20,000 bags of rice here because the island was just literally starving to death. The king agreed, and the rice was sent on 12 boats to Jeju. However, 7 of the 12 boats were wrecked on its way to the island, so we didn't even get half of that shipment. Yeah. So when Kim Man-Deok heard the news, her heart was broken for her people, and she knew she had to do something. So what she did next is just incredible. She spent her entire fortune to buy more rice and other staples. And by the time
everything,
she spent everything down to the last dime. Yeah, she just spent it all on rice to save her people. And she only ended up taking 10% of the rice that was sent for her own family and then distributed 90%, all of it evenly amongst the people. And it's said that she was able to save about 18,000 lives with her donation.
Wow, that is unbelievable charity that she doled out there.
Yeah, incredible story. The governor was so impressed by her selfless deed. He wrote to the king and told him everything that had happened. The king was also impressed and wanted to grant her a prize. And Kim Man-Deok ended up getting an unbelievable gift, but you have to hear the story for yourself.
Wow.
I'll let the curator tell you all about it.
I'm glad this is heading in this direction because often when we've talked about Jeju history, the king kind of just sweeps them under the carpet. But this sounds like a happy, not ending, but a happy part to the story. Here's our second clip.
정조는 이 사람에게 상을 줘야겠다라고 해서 김만덕의 소원을 들어주라고 명령을 내려요. 그때 김만덕은 자기는 서울에 가서 임금님이 사시는 궁궐을 보고 또 금강산 구경을 하고 싶다고 하거든요. 당시에는 출입 금지령이라는 법이 있었는데 제주 사람, 특히 여자는 그 섬 밖을 나갈 수 없는 법이 있었어요. 근데 김만덕의 아까 말했던 소원은 그런 원칙을 깨는 소원이죠. 하지만 정조가 이 소원을 들어주라고 해서 김만덕은 그런 원칙을 깨고 서울에 올라가게 되고요. 또 왕은 아무나 볼 수 있는 게 아니에요. 어떠한 일정한 벼슬, 직책이 있어야 왕을 만날 수 있는데 왕이 그것을 위해서 김만덕에게 여성이 가질 수 있는 최고 벼슬이라고 할 수 있는 의녀 반수라는 벼슬을 내리고요. 그래서 궁궐에 초대를 해서 왕을 만나게 하고 그리고 금강산 구경도 시켜주게 됩니다.
So King Jeongjo was so moved and impressed by the story of Kim Man-Deok and what she did. He sent an order. He laid down an order. That's what you can see King Jeongjo if you're curious as to what he looks like. Very good looking guy. He sent an order to give Kim Man-Deok a prize. Anything she wanted, whether it was money or status, whatever she wanted, it was hers. But she said that rather than receive a gift, she wanted to make a request to the king. And her request was to be allowed a visit to the royal palace to meet with the king, and then also to be allowed a visit to Kumgangsan mountain. The king agreed to her request, which was highly, highly unusual and caused quite a stir because first of all, you had to have a certain level of status to be granted presence with the king. So what he did was he endowed her a title at the palace, which gave her the highest possible status for a woman outside of the royal family to be able to meet with her in person. Yeah. And then, secondly, if you all recall, there was a 200-year ban on Jeju residents leaving the island. No one, especially not women, were allowed to step off the island. And so, as far as we know, she was the only woman allowed to set foot off the island in this 200-year period. It's just incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I got to be honest. I thought she was going to ask for something for the people of Jeju, like some more rice or something like that. But come on, everyone deserves, their reward for doing something good, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. She ended up spending about 1 year on the mainland at the King's Palace, and then she returned to Jeju, where she went back to her job and then continued her work as a prolific philanthropist here. She lived a long life for the time period, died in 1812 at the age of 73. And then when she did die, she left all of her fortune to the poor, except for a small portion, which was given to her foster children. But then even in her death, she was honored. The tombstone at her grave was engraved with her full name, which was unheard of for women during the time.
What? Why were we so backwards back then? You couldn't have your full name. What? Not even in death. That's ridiculous. And she had some foster children as well. That's even more like philanthropic, it seems. Wow, that's so amazing. And all this coming from her status, as an orphan, and then as a kisang, and buying her way out of that, and then going on to be incredibly successful as a merchant, all in the time where it must have been pretty nigh on impossible to do this as a female, right? I'm looking at a news report on her that was done like in modern times, saying, we should never forget Kim Man-Deok, and it said that there's even a biography that was ordered to be written of Kim from King Jeongjo, so that people would remember this. Wow, we do need to remember this. This is really inspirational for people now who are maybe wealthy, and when we have these big disasters or people in need, it might be like a nudge in the side to say, don't forget about Kim Man-Deok's spirit.
Yep. Absolutely. I thought the same thing when I was there. I was like, people just need to learn of this story.
Yeah, now maybe many people will be interested in the drama, because I don't know how popular it was that we played the soundtrack track to earlier. We've got another one from Kosang Kim Man-Deok, The Great Merchant, if you want to check it out. That drama, apparently I was speaking to our producer in the song break, was relatively popular from back in 2010 on KBS, starring Lee Mi-yeon, Han Jae-seok and others, telling what the story that is being told now on Wonders of Jeju is all about. Fabulous stuff, Angel. KMD Deep Dive. I love it on the script how you've abbreviated like that. I don't think she was doing it at the time. Kim Man-Deok.
Yeah, Kim Man-Deok, KMD. She was famous during her lifetime. I mean, she was a celebrity. During her stay in Seoul, there are records that say that like crowds of people followed her wherever she went. And then high-ranking officials and the upper class, they all wanted to get invites to come meet with her to ask her questions and kind of probe her and find out what she was all about.
Why? But like, if she had claimed to be some kind of religious deity, I feel that people would have, at the time, maybe even believed that. But she was just doing this out, the goodness of her heart kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess even back in that time, it was quite uncommon right? For somebody to give up their entire fortune to save the less fortunate.
Surely.
Yeah. Much to learn from, I think. But I just wanted to mention, we touched on it a little bit in part 2, but just everything worked against her success, right? Not only was KMD a woman, but she was single, who used to be a kisang, right? And she must have been marginalized and undoubtedly penalized by society. But as the story goes...
And an orphan, yeah.
Right. And she was an orphan on top of all of that. Not only was she able to achieve her dream of starting her own business, despite it all, she was able to excel and become one of the richest people maybe in all of Korea, completely defying societal norms. So I just wanted to make another point of that.
I don't know why this story is not more well known. And
right.
yeah, we've not touched upon it on Daily K, I'm pretty sure. It seems long overdue, like maybe the Elon Musk of her time.
Yeah, or the Jeff Bezos, right? Just incredible.
Why
rich.
can we not think of female figures, right? That's the problem with society, isn't it? Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, there you
We
go.
go.
There you go.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah. Then 30 years after her death, she is enshrined in the history of Korean art by a really, really famous art guy in Korea's history. We talked about him before on the show. He was the famed scholar and calligrapher of the Yangban class who was exiled to Jeju Island. Chusa Kim Jong-hee. You guys all remember him, right?
Of course, yes. We talk about him even when you're not on the show, Angel.
Oh, yeah.
We do have his story, right, with the lady that you interviewed.
Right. So this has to deal with Chusa Kim Jong-hee and how this story relates to Kim Man-Deok.
Here we go.
세상을 떠나고 나서도 30년 후에 추사 김정희라는 사람이 제주도에 유배를 오게 되는데 그 30년이 흐른 후에도 사람들이 이때 김만덕 할머니가 없었으면은 우린 지금 이렇게 살지 못했다 이렇게 칭송하는 얘기를 듣게 돼요. 그래서 그것에 감명을 받은 추사 김정희가 그 김만덕 집안의 후손에게 은혜의 빛이 온 세상에 퍼진다라는 은광연세라는 글씨를 써주게 됩니다. 여기 보시면은 이게 은광연세 탄핵이에요. 당시 추사 김정희가 써줬던 글씨를 다시 나무에 새겨가지고 이렇게 간판처럼 만들어 놓은 건데요. 이거는 그 김만덕 후손이셨던 김균 선생님이 대대로 가지고 계시다가 저희 김만덕 기념관 기증을 해주셨어요.
Wow, so those are the words from Chusa Kim Jong-hee on that wooden board that we saw at the end.
Right. Yeah, he did the calligraphy on that. That's his handwriting. That's his calligraphy art. Wow. So Chusa Kim Jong-hee, right, is exiled to Jeju. And he keeps hearing stories of this woman named Kim Man-Deok who was unfathomably rich, but decided to spend her entire wealth to buy rice for the entire island of Jeju during a severe famine. But this wasn't like just recently, right? This was 30 years prior. And he just couldn't believe that people were still talking about her even 30 years after her death. So he looked into her story and was so impressed by what he found and learned what he learned. So he penned his calligraphy art in her memory. It says, 은광연세, that's what you see on the screen in Korean, which means the light of kindness or grace spreads throughout the world. Really pretty.
Oh, wow. That's amazing, isn't it? So if people are interested in this museum, have you got any tips for them?
Yes, though the Kim Man-Deok Memorial Hall is not just to highlight her and her philanthropy. The purpose of the museum is actually also to educate people on the importance of giving and ways that they can give. So the third floor is where you can find the exhibition hall. That's where I visited and had the tour of her life, dedicated to her history. The second floor is called the Experience of Giving Hall, where there are activities and games more geared towards children, but still fun for adults. And it's all about volunteering and donating. Yeah. Oh, and if you want to check out their website, they do have one, Man-Deok, MANDUK, museum.or.kr.
Okie dokie. And admission is paid for or free?
It's absolutely free in the spirit of Kim Man-Deok. What's Up in Jeju is supported by JDC, which is creating a free international city that resembles nature, embraces the future, and reaches the world.
Arirang Radio.